It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Sam Lesante. Folks, I want you to mark April 24th down in your calendar. Why? It is a very important day in the state of Pennsylvania. It is the primary. And yes, I know some of you say, hey, why should we vote anyway? Folks, just think for a moment. Where are we now in our country? Where are we in the state of Pennsylvania? What about the taxes, the senior citizens, and everything that we're always concerned about? If you don't vote, you have a problem. Here's an opportunity for you to vote. Today, my guest is Brian Rich. He is running for state senator in the 29th Senatorial District. He's here today to explain to you why you should vote for him versus his opponent, okay? And I have an email here that came in. Many questions came in. And this gentleman says, I'm trying to learn more about all the candidates who want to be my senator. I applaud this gentleman for sending this email to me because he wants to know about the Senate. He wants to know who they are and their qualifications. Brian, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
Brian, many people who know you in Schuylkill County, they know who you are and your background, but there's some people who do not know who you are, okay? Why don't you give us a little bit about your background?
Sam, Pottsville High graduate in 1977, went to Boston University, came back, went into the family business, and shortly thereafter, we began to build the cogeneration industry. We built 2 power plants, and in 1985, we went into commercial operation with our first power plant. And since that time, Schuylkill County's, one of Schuylkill County's significant industries was power generation.
In your background, as people want to know who about, you know, and what are your qualifications, you have to deal with a lot of people, okay? Now, I know you're a little modest, but we need to know, you know, what you've accomplished as well as any candidate, because that's the substance for me to determine whether I want to vote for Brian Rich for state senator. So, bank boards, your developments. Let's talk about your development. The hundreds of jobs that you've created. Okay.
Maybe being a father. That might be #1. So
that's the most important.
That's the most important. Yeah. So, but
5 children you have.
5 children. Yes. Okay. I think that the coal business is my love. I love being in the coal business and the jobs we've created with it, and the labor relations and the personnel. We have great people that have done a great job in Schuylkill County. To make Schuylkill County's single largest export energy between coal and electricity, it's a great accomplishment. It's really the backbone of our community, and I'm so proud of the people that work for our companies, our oil companies as well. I don't mean to leave those guys out, but our oil companies as well. And our engineering, we have 2 engineering offices where we do professional engineering, mining engineering as well as residential subdivisions, as for instance, or highway work. So we have a bunch of good professionals. But the coal business is where the coal and electric business is where my heart lies, and I think we've done a great job in Schuylkill County in resurrecting that business over the last 25, 30 years.
How many employees do you have working for you? Working plus then the jobs that you've created.
Well, I don't know exactly how many jobs we've created, but hundreds, thousands of jobs indirectly, I believe. But directly, we have around 620 employees. Mm-hmm. We built the Walmart and the Home Depot, the Tractor Supply, Coal Creek Commerce. Hundreds of people are employed in that development, and we have our own machine shops as well. So and the jobs associated with supporting the coal industry, from the tire businesses to the oil businesses to electric providers, service providers. It's a lot of jobs.
All right, now, Brian, what you're telling me is, you know, and if you go to their website, folks, BrianRichForSenate.com, you'll see the whole story here, as I would ask any candidate.
Well, let me interrupt you. Yeah. One of the places that you could also go is to my company website, ReadingAnthracite.com. Okay. And there's a great portfolio of companies and our accomplishments. I mean, sometimes I cut a little short, but if this person wants to really get to see what we've done and the kind of jobs that we provided for Schuylkill County, www.readinganthracite.com, and it'll give us a good background of what I've done over the last 25 years.
And I think in any candidate, okay, not only you, it's to be able to learn as much as I can about the candidate who is running, who is going to serve me. And as I said, I applaud this guy who says, I'm trying to learn more about all the candidates who want to be my senator. And I applaud him for this, because it's like if you're going to get a surgery or if you need a specialist, what you do is you go Google that doctor. You want to know as much as you can about that doctor or that hospital, and you want to learn as much. And once you learn it, you feel comfortable in going to that.
It's a great analogy. It's a great analogy. I guess some of the things that I lend to the candidacy is I've served on 3 bank boards over my career, and having to understand the finance is critical to running any business. So that was a great learning experience outside of my own core businesses, mining and energy. I got the opportunity to serve on these bank boards over a period of time. I'm currently on the bank board at Monument Bank in Doylestown, and it's been a great experience. And it's something that through these difficult economic times, I've seen how fiscal responsibility is the cornerstone to a recovery. You have to be fiscally responsible to have an economic recovery.
So you look at your businesses. I look at Brian Rich, and I say, okay, you've done this bank board, you developed this, etc. Now you sit back and you have a business. You were able to fine tune when you had to fine tune. Now you say, okay, I'm interested in becoming a state senator, and the question is, well, then why does Brian Rich, who has enterprises that are keeping people employed, working with unions and negotiating and being on top, what made you say, I have to run for state senator?
Well, I couldn't really consider doing it if it wasn't for my brothers and the people that work for us that are terrific. So we have a great staff, and everybody that works for us, we have a solid company that's running pretty well, fortunately, knock on wood. But I've watched our future deteriorate. It's not the same future that we had when I was a kid, and my kids will migrate out of Pennsylvania if we don't solve the problems of Pennsylvania. And there's been Dave Argel, who's my opponent, has had many hollow promises over the course of his career. He's there 27 years. He's in Harrisburg as long as I've been in Schuylkill County mining coal. So we haven't had the property tax reform. We've continued. We've had an escalation of the state budget from $7 billion or $8 billion when he was first elected to a budget in Pennsylvania of $28 billion. So a tripling of our state budget over the course of his career. And at the same time, the Pennsylvania economy didn't grow 3 times. It grew about 20% over that time versus 300%. For the state budget. So we've had an explosion of state government, but just generally a bad job from our current senator and legislator. I mean, he's voted for, of course, the famous midnight pay raise, which is unconscionable, but even more so, probably more problematic from my standpoint is the pension increase that he voted for himself, 51% increase in his pension. So that's what's compelled me. I don't, because of this fiscal irresponsibility.
When I hear you say these things, of course you have 2 sides every story, the thing is that some people, you talk about pension, increasing, you talk about that, and then my concern is, well, but I'm also concerned about property taxes. I'm also concerned about, school boards and taxes and what's happening in my life, etc. And I want to come back. I want to ask you those specific questions,
Great.
and what you're going to do about it, all right?
Great.
And what experience you bring to the table. Folks, I'm talking to Brian Rich. He's running for state senator in the 29th Senatorial District in the state of Pennsylvania. As I ask every one of you, please always check out every candidate. Do as much homework as you can, because, folks, it affects you. You know that. BrianRichForSenate.com, or go to ReadingAnthracite.com to learn about this particular candidate. And I applaud. This is one of many emails I get, folks, where this person says, I am trying to learn more about all the candidates who want to be my senator. I say congratulations to that person, and all of us should look and see who the people are, whether it's Brian or anyone else. Then make a valued decision. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Remember April 24th. Please, folks, vote. no matter who you vote for, but please vote. It's very important. My guest today, Brian Rich. He is running for state senator in the 29th senatorial district, and there's a lot of concerns there. He's going up an opponent who's been there for 27 years. 27 years. Okay, you say, Brian, that you're going to bring a lot to the table, experience, etc. Because you have Mr. Argel, who's been there for 27 years. You mentioned about property taxes, all right? And sometimes, we've heard this story so many times. The Gaming Commission, we're going to eliminate this, we'll eliminate that. People are still paying, okay. What about this pension program? How does that affect property taxes?
Well, it's really the single biggest issue that the state faces. It's Dave is, for instance, a career politician, and he's been there 27 years. And one of the key votes that he made about, I think it was in 2002, was to increase his pension 50%. Well, and all state employees 50%. This is translating into the budget deficits that's causing the strain on the revenue department in Pennsylvania. That's the driver behind all the deficits. It's the driver that's behind our property taxes going up, because the schools have to fund their pension obligations. So Dave actually, and this was a pretty astonishing number, that if Dave were to live 30 years past his retirement, if we send home Dave, and he lives 30 years, and God willing, I hope he does, because he and I are the same age, he'll collect $3.1 million in legislative pension alone. If you spread that across all of our legislators, we've got an enormous problem.
So what are you going to do about it?
Well, first, I'm not taking the pension. I refuse to take a defined benefit pension, which is what the cause of the problem is. The defined benefit pension, it knocks over all the great companies. It was the demise of Bethlehem Steel and numerous other companies. I mean, Bethlehem Steel fell under the weight of the defined pension plan. Everybody out in the private sector has a 401k type plan. So anyway, what I would do would be, number one, I'm not going to take the pension, to highlight the pension issue as a problem. And the second thing I would do, if I'm elected, if I'm honored to be sent to Harrisburg by the electorate, the first thing I'm going to introduce is legislation that would require all state legislators to accept a 401k style pension system, as opposed to the defined benefit plan, which is causing our property taxes to rise. People don't always make this connection, but the connection is the enormity of our obligation to pay our pensioners. The pension, the people that we promised pension to, it's enormous, and that translates directly into property taxes. Until we solve that problem, we won't get property tax relief. So number one, no pension for me. Number two, I would introduce a bill that would restrict all legislators to a 401k style plan.
So Brian, you're full of enthusiasm. You're excited. You're going at this 100%. What fires you so much that you feel that you need to get in that Senate and do what you say you want to do?
Well, because career politicians aren't addressing the problems that are apparent. Business 101. 1983, got out of college, and the defined benefit plans that collapse the likes of Bethlehem Steel, the greatest country in the country. It built the Golden Gate Bridge, the Empire State Building, all the battleships of World War II. As soon as their sales declined, the weight of the promises on the defined benefit pension system collapsed the company. It happened to General Motors. The list goes on. It happened to all the great railroads. It happened to the great airlines. So this is not a difficult problem if we tackle it. So it's a problem that needs to be tackled. And the solution is the solution that the private sector has employed in retirement, and that's to have 401k plans. If a 401k is good enough for the private sector, it should be good enough for the public sector.
So you mentioned about your opponent, okay, Dave Argel. He voted for.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Sam, yeah. But you asked me what's fired me up.
Yeah.
What's fired me up is that Pennsylvania has such great resources, such great opportunity, and we're failing on simple fiscal realities that can be dealt with. These are not insurmountable problems. And if we fail, history's going to write a book that says, what were they thinking about I mean, so we shouldn't ignore the things we can do something about. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I guess you're talking about a lot of common sense.
Common sense.
Yeah, okay.
And when you're a career politician, the issue is that you walk a fine line, because in Dave's case and in many other legislators' cases, they've got themselves a legislative fortune that's coming down the road. So they don't want to do anything that would jeopardize their positions or their jobs.
Well, you become a career politician?
Two terms. I've only promised. That's the promise that I've made to the electorate. I will not serve more
So
than 2
you
terms.
want to go 8 years? And
I think that term limits are a must.
A must.
I think
okay.
a must.
So now listen, when it came to voting on Marcel Lassalle, your opponent did the right thing.
He did, and Marcel Lassalle is one of the great opportunities that Pennsylvania has. And in Dave's case, he did vote with the industry to promote the industry and to give certainty to the industry, and also generate revenue for Pennsylvania. But I would have made my vote much differently. That Dave voted for the bill, but he missed an important element. The 29th district has 60 or 70% of the district has Marcellus shale under it. So I would have simply said to the drilling companies, to one of their lobbyists, look, I'll vote with the industry, but let's put a test well in the 29th district to see if we can enjoy the upside that the central northern Pennsylvania is enjoying, and enjoying it in a great way to support energy independence.
So when I'm looking at here, okay, and I would ask any politician, okay, we're always promised a lot of things. The electorate has promised a lot of things, that we're going to do this and we're going to do that. What I'm thinking here is, with your experience that you've had in negotiating and dealing and building your, the place, the business that you build, gives you that opportunity to know how to negotiate and what to do when you're dealing with these people.
Well, yeah, well, that's a common sense deal, Sam. I mean, they want us to vote. We evaluate the situation. In Schuylkill County, we have the geologic deposit. They'd almost by rule, they would cooperate and drill a test hole.
So let me ask you a question, Brian. If I lived in your district, okay, and I'm going out to vote, and I'm encouraging everyone to vote, it's very important. They should vote. Can I trust Brian Rich?
Certainly. I've been in Schuylkill County for 28 years, building a business, and the people that are employed with me for our companies know that my interests are with them, and my interests are with the 29th district and Pennsylvania. You absolutely trust me to fulfill my obligations as state senator.
Folks, I'm talking to Brian Rich, and remember, as this particular man who emailed me, one of many emails I get is, I'm trying to learn more about all the candidates who want to be my senator. And once again, I applaud this guy. Learn as much as you can about all the candidates, all right? Brian Rich wants your vote for state senator. Now, what about accountability? And how will he be accountable to the 29th senatorial district? And it will also affect the state of Pennsylvania. Stay with us. Folks, thanks for staying with us. I'm Sam Lesante. You're watching the Sam Lesante Show, and I'm telling you, April 24th is a very important day. Primary elections, folks, you got to get out and vote. My guest today is Brian Rich, and he's running for state senator in the 29th senatorial district. A lot of concerns that we have as residents of the state of Pennsylvania. Brian, many people sat where you sat. Senator Santorum, Governor Corbett. I've spoken to Newt Gingrich a number of times. You name the politicians, they've been there.
You're putting me in high cotton
okay.
here, buddy.
Oh yes, I'm putting you with the big guys.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, and we always talk about accountability. And one thing I have to tell you, when I had Corbett, when he was the Attorney General, we spoke to him, and he said, "This is what I wanted to do." After 4 years, he sat right where you sat, and he said, "Sam, I told you I would do it, and here's what I did." And he was accountable. I'm not.
Well,
I'm just,
well, the voters have to hold us accountable. They have to hold their elected officials accountable. And the way you do that is to send them home if they're not doing the job. I mean, it's the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So, in my opponent's case, we've heard promises. We've heard promises about property tax reform, and he claims that he's one of us, and he claims that he's fiscal conservative. If you simply look at the record, if you simply look at my opponent's record, the contrary is quite true. And so I believe in accountability, absolutely. if I failed to achieve my job as a legislator, I think that the electorate should send you home.
We talked about the stimulus, okay? Everyone thought at the time the stimulus was going to do great things, et cetera, et cetera. I have my opinion, but it's not you're the guest. You know, you have here, you say, no more failed government stimulus spending, okay? Where was your opponent with this?
Well, he voted for Rendell's stimulus package, and I think generally speaking, I mean, if the state is going to go into deeper debt with a stimulus bill that on borrowed money, it's contrary to business practices. But if you were going to go into debt, who's a better provider of jobs? Who's a better producer of jobs than the private sector? What the government, if they wanted to go deeper into debt, they should have cut taxes to the taxpayer, and that taxpayer money would have gone to a lot better use and created a lot more jobs than a government stimulus package.
You know what ticks me off, Brian? I'll tell you what ticks me off. You know, I have a business here. I have employed, certainly not as many you have, but we all try to have, you know, employment is important, okay, and jobs. Why is it that federal government and state government always makes the small businessman's life miserable?
Well, regulation is the order of the day for Harrisburg. These regulatory bodies that add these jobs, they don't have anything to do. I mean, in many cases, so they're out inspecting employers because that's their job, to go out and to interfere with our freedoms. It's in many cases the government has become intrusive.
You know what happens, Brian? And here's what happens. See, the general public thinks, okay, that's a good thing. They're businessmen, they're making a lot of money, and they should be punished, okay, and we should regulate them, etc. And then all of a sudden, not that we do not want to keep the laws, which we do, but then what happens, we get bombarded, then we have to say, okay, you know what, I have to lay these people off, I can't afford it, and then this is what happens. You know, people they don't want to invest. You have to change that atmosphere.
Well, as a businessman, I deal with that all the time, and there's levels of bureaucracy that are stymieing business growth in Pennsylvania, stymieing enthusiasm. People are largely, I see just a lot of melancholy people that don't have enthusiasm because there's obstacles every day that are thrown at them. People are throwing their hands up in the air saying, I can't deal with it.
You deal with them all the time.
I mean, I deal with them all the time. But it's to go to specific examples. I have a lot, but the one thing that's maybe a lot of us can relate to is how burdensome our governments become. If you have a new car, why do you need to get an inspection every 12 months? Why make it every 4 years? Make life a little easier. I mean, that's an example. But those examples are many.
You had the Coal Creek Plaza. Is it Coal Creek Plaza?
Coal Creek Commerce Center.
Commerce Center.
St. Clair.
At one time, I saw a big strip in there. I saw, you know, it was ugly, etc. Now, when I pass there, it's beautiful. Okay, that whole area is. I mean, seriously. I mean, if anyone, rather who you are, it's beautiful.
Thanks.
Now, I just wonder, okay, how many loops and how many times they made your life difficult because you were trying to do this, and then when you're done, look at the place. They're flourishing. Vito's place is doing great. Sophie's. I mean, I don't know.
Walmart
sure.
and everything.
They're all
great.
And so not you created jobs. And I would say this to anyone who did it. Okay, even if your opponent did it, but you guys, you did it. You know, Brian Rich was there doing that. How many times did you get obstacles saying and then boom, then you're fighting to do this and you're fighting to do that?
Well, on that particular project, the obstacles were many, but it wasn't that was more of a local zoning issues, which is the same thing.
Yeah.
This myriad of zoning issues. I mean, an example using Coal Creek as an example. No reclamation funds, no stimulus, no nothing. That was built strictly out of my investment of. And our company's ingenuity, and it's turned out to be a terrific thing for northern Schuylkill County. But an example of that is that year the zoning board. It took me about a year and a half to get through zoning hearings, where the township zoning boards and the township engineers charged me more for review purposes than my own engineers charged to do the building projects. So to get the approvals cost more than the actual drawings for all the buildings and all the infrastructure and all the roads. It's a It's an obstacle that's adding amazing costs to doing business in Pennsylvania.
How many people in that situation? I hear these all the time from people who want to do, build or repair or remodel. And again, I'm all for our environmental, and I'm sure you are, because you could see what you did with your mining reclamation, where they have now deer and flowers and trees, etc. But that's the thing, Brian, I think that people are fed up with. They're fed up with all these regulations, and maybe you could do something about it.
Well, it touches all of our lives. And it's created a frustration level that's causing business to be stymied. And that's I think what we need to do is we have to look at all the budgets of all the departments and determine what are critical for our environment, for our public safety. And if it's not critical, I mean, then we don't have the luxury to fund these projects that don't bring an economic return for the taxpayer.
Brian, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Okay.
I appreciate it. I have to do something, Sam. I have to thank my wife and on March for everything. My wife, I wouldn't be doing this without her. And then on March 31st, I'm having an open house at Reading Anthracite. We have a new piece of equipment that kids and parents and everybody enjoy. It's the largest mining shovel in Pennsylvania right now. I just took delivery on it. So on March 31st, there's going to be an open house. It'll be in the paper. So
sounds like fun.
It's going to be a good day.
Folks, we talk about people's records, okay? I encourage you to check both candidates. Go to Dave Argle's record. He doesn't have a record. Brian doesn't have a record. And then check his websites, brianrich4senate.com and readinganthracite.com, and you get an opportunity of knowing what, then you make your decision. As this person emailed me, I'm trying to learn more about all the candidates who want to be my senator. Folks, it's important that you know who they are. Then once you decide who is the most qualified, please vote. I'm Sam Lesante, and we'll see you next time.